So for number 15, we're tasked to perform the implementation of ID sampling rate, or the usage of multi-rate, which means multiple sampling rates. And in DSP, multi-rate system uses multiple sampling rates within the system. Specifically, it uses resampling, which means combining interpolation and decimation to change the sampling rate by a rational factor. So for the code, as usual, we're going to start with the clearing of everything, clearing of the workspace, clearing of the variables and everything. For the setup, for the L variable, it will be stored there, the upsampling factor that the user would enter. For the D variable, it would store the downsampling factor value. For the N variable, it is going to store the length of the input signal that the user wishes to have. And for F1 and F2, it's going to be stored there the frequency of the first and second sinusoidal. For the X variable, it would store the input, specifically the input of cosine 2 times pi times the frequency value number 1 times n plus the other cosine times 2 times pi times the second frequency times n. For the Y variable, this is where the resampled value would be stored. In this case, we're going to use the resample function, which is going to perform the resampling. And basically, resample is the ratio of the upsampling and the downsampling factor that is entered. So that is why the parameter here is XLD. X is the input, which is the basis, and then L is the upsampling factor entered, and D is the downsampling factor entered. For the graph part of the item, subplot first is 2 and 1. Title of this first graph would be the input sequence. X-axis label is time, y-axis label is amplitude. For the second graph, the title would be output sequence. X-axis title, x-axis label would be time, and y-axis label would be amplitude. So running the code, now the system is asking us for the upsampling factor. Going to enter 3. For the downsampling, we're going to enter 2. For the length of the input signal, we're going to enter 40. For the frequency of the first sinusoidal, we're going to enter 0.01. For the frequency of the second sinusoidal, we're going to use 0.03. And as we can see in the output waveform, for the input sequence, the time is up to 40, and for the output, time is up to 60, meaning the sampling rate from input to output has increased. And the reason for this is that since the downsampling factor is 2 and the upsampling factor is 3, meaning the upsampling factor is higher than the downsampling factor. And using the resampling function, the operation or the solution that is going to happen there is that it is going to perform division, since it is the ratio of the upsampling and downsampling factor. And since the upsampling factor is higher, what happened in the output waveform is that the output sequence has the resampled value is as a higher sampling rate. Again, for the reason that the upsampling factor as a higher value. That is it for number 15.